A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 60.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. In today's episode, chillin' in the crib with the homies. John, we're just chilling like a villain.
You know it, brother.
And what this is why who we associate with and where we hang out can determine our mental health and our success in life. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, you know, it's so very true, isn't it? We are a product of our environment. And today, that's what we really want to talk to you about is our environments. You know, oftentimes when we're trying to change ourselves or change our lives, we forget that we're not only trying to change inward, but we're also trying to change outward as well. And if you think of yourself as water, your environment is the container that is holding the water. So if you're water and you change you change bowls, you go to a fruit bowl as compared to a bucket, you know, the experience is going to be different. If you have friends who are, you know, turning up the heat on that bucket of water in certain areas, you're going to get a hot spot, but it's going to, you know, warm up your water. It's going to get you agitated your water. Anyhow,
do you remember the Bruce Lee quote? This is about water, since you just brought it up. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. If you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot pot, it becomes a teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. So be like water, my friend.
See, that was perfect. It's like we had that planned.
Yeah, and we didn't.
I know. It's, you know, I guess just great minds think alike, Tom, and then there's us. Anyhow, I knew that you'd like that comparison. But, you know, if we're talking about our environment, talking about that container that is really the shell of our life, you know, what can we do to change it? And how do we adapt to a new bowl, to a new container? How do you change shape? I think a lot of people have these type of questions.
I agree. And one of the things that, you know, the reason I brought this up, the whole environment thing, and also who you hang out with, it's kind of, you know, they hold hands together. We did an episode, if you remember, on the laws of power. It was law 10, which is infection. And it was avoid the unhappy and unlucky. We have a whole episode on this, but let me just read the judgment real quick. It was, you can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You may feel you are helping the drowning man, but you are precipitating in your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it on you. Associate with the happy and fortunate instead. Now, that's just one part of the puzzle. As I was getting to is, I've changed my schedule around, and so I'm home during the day a lot now when my family is off at work, and I'm in the house a lot. And I'm like, you know, I told John, I said, you know, I need to change my environment. So I'm thinking about, you know, even though I have weight equipment and stuff like that, I'm thinking about joining like the YMCA or something, just get out of the house. So I'm not always in this same thing where you're surrounded by chores and things to do. You need to get out and kind of clear your mind, or go to the beach is another thing I like to do. I like to go over and, you know, enjoy nature, and it gives you a refreshing point of view. But the same way as the house can, you know, hold you down or make you almost feel depressed. Same thing with people. People can hold you down. So if you're associating with people that are negative or, you know, have a lot of gossip and stuff, that spills over into your life. And so I'm not saying you have to get rid of your friends or your family. You love your friends and your family, right? Unquestionably. But make sure that you can choose your peers. You don't always have to hang out with people that are going to put you down or not believe in the things that, you're trying to do or try to change in yourself.
Yeah. So, Tom, go back to you trying to get out of the house now and you really adapting to this new schedule of
Right.
yours. Really big change in your schedule. So you saying you want to get out of the house, but from where I stand, what I see is that what you're trying to do is you're trying to apply structure or a schedule. You're out of sync. You don't have a set schedule anymore. And how really that is a part of our environment. That's something that's a container that we live in. Kind of like if your water is in a bird bath, it's going to be out there baking in the sun, and it's going to be different than when you're in a bucket of water in the shade or in the ice. And so you've had a big mix. You've had a big change in containers recently. So you're trying to, find that structure and that schedule. And I think that once you search and once you try different things, and, it'll just pan out.
Absolutely. What I did notice though is, spending a lot of time in the house during the week when no one's home, I realized, it can affect your mood of how the condition of your house. Sometimes I like to say that the inside of your body sometimes is reflected in your dwelling. If your house is messy or if your grass is overrun, and it could mean that you're too busy to get to that stuff, or you're in a state of depression, or you feel overwhelmed and you just let this stuff pile up around you. I think it's important to have a nice living area. Like if you wanted to be a little bit more romantic with your spouse, right, John? You don't want to have a bunch of clutter in your bedroom and, stuff. Or as I used to at one time, I used to have my weights in the bedroom. That, I tell you, man, that doesn't do a lot for stimulating your spouse.
What's that smell?
So yeah, think about that kind of stuff. Where you are. I mean, they've done studies, right, about colors. When I know in weight rooms or something like that, or football locker rooms, they'd have like red, in order to get the team geared up.
Yeah.
Just thought you might want to hear that again. Keep the competition going.
Well, we are hanging at the crib, right?
Absolutely, man. It's a cool little riff.
I know. I was just about ready to beatbox. Anyhow, think of your environment like this too. If you're going to cook something, you need to set up your environment. And if you want to bake a cake, what are you going to need to bake that cake? Well, first of all, you're going to need a kitchen. And what is it? What do you mean? You need an open space to work. You need you need pots and pans. You need the ingredients. You need the oven. You need all that. You need to set up your environment before you can cook. I have a boat project, which is been in my family for a long time, and I have all the parts and pieces of this boat, but my boat's in parts and pieces, and I need to put it back together. So in order to really get that done and get that accomplished, I need to, organize my garage. I need to make sure my tools are organized. I need to create an environment which is conducive to getting that work done. Like having a table where I can lay out all the parts and schedule as well. Schedule what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it. And it all contributes. It all will move you closer to your goals.
You bring up the kitchen, John, and that's a great idea for if you have your kitchen laid out where you feel like you want to cook and you have all the stuff and you're not searching through drawers, you're going to be more likely to be able to cook and eat maybe healthier if you want to try to change your diet. That's hard if all of a sudden you're looking through your cupboards and you got things falling out, pots and pans collapsing, can't find what food or ingredients you need, and you just go, forget it, I'm just going to order out and get some Chinese. So yeah, having it laid out and having everything in the right order can help you, accomplish some of your goals that you're setting. You might set a goal. Hey, I want to be fit. I really want to, work out and do something, but you don't have the space or you don't have the environment conducive to it. So that's another part of that you don't really take account when you're making goals.
That's I'm glad you brought that up. What you just mentioned is an excuse not to exercise, that I don't have the space. All you have to do is have a section of floor that you can do some push-ups or do some burpees or do some jumping jacks, or, you can do a bunch of different things in a very small amount of space. So
yeah, but when you have any hurdle, when you have any hurdle in front of you, all right, I have for jujitsu, I have these jujitsu mats, right? And I really don't have the space where I have them located to pull them out adequately. I can pull them out, but I have to move stuff around. They're heavy. It's a pain in the ass to move them and get them situated. So it's not like I just open up a door and there's the mats and I'm good to go. I don't have to concentrate on setting up. It's almost like when I set up for a podcast. I don't have a studio that I can just walk into. I would love just to be able to walk into a studio and turn on the mic. But it's like setting up a remote broadcast. It's like 30 minutes of setting up my equipment, pulling out the tables, getting the stuff out of the closet. So, and that kind of stuff, if you're on a bad day, can hinder you from taking that final step and going, I'm going to do this today, or I'm going to work out today, or I'm going to podcast today, or I'm going to eat healthy. Those barriers it just gives you one more hurdle. And sometimes they seem like giant hurdles, even though they're not. It's really not that big of a deal for me to pull out some mats and lay them out. But, in my mind, it's like the pain in the ass.
It would be a big deal if people went to our website and at the bottom of that first page is a donate button. If you clicked on that and donated $5, we would put that towards changing Tom's environment. I've been on for months. Months and months and months about creating an environment because he's for the podcast. He really needs a studio. I have a place where I can go and it's quiet and besides the refrigerator running, it works out pretty good. But poor Tom is portable. Tom is lugging out all this stuff. He has a podcasting cart. And he really needs the space. So if you can find it in your heart, go to our website.
I'm like a man living in a van down by the river. My podcast gear. No, I would like to make courses. There's a lot of things I like to do because I have video equipment too, and I just don't have the space to set it all up. I'd have to go down to my living room and I've done it. And sometimes I do it for parties. I put up this big green screen and, we love to shoot, photos of everyone that comes to the party and send out, pictures of New Year's I change all the backgrounds and it's just fun, but it's just a lot of work.
So, an element of, considering your environment and trying to change it. So it's really conducive to your creativity and your freedom. It really, you need to you really need to develop problem solving skills. And what I mean by that is by using your creativity to solve problems, rough spots in your environment, kind of shaping your environment, requires some creativity. Going back when I was going through a lot of financial difficulties, even though we were living tight and we didn't have much, I look back on those times as being just milestones in my life. When I had problems like my microwave blowing up and my refrigerator going out, I had to use creativity to solve those problems. Those were definitely environmental factors which were causing me a great deal of concern. And I used my creativity and I moved through that. Tough situations in our environment require that. So, think of we talk about games a lot on the Swift Kick in the Ass, and if you can make your problem into a game, like solving your environment. Say you really don't like the the place that you live. You can make a plan to figure out how to get the hell out of there. You're not stuck in one place. You're not stuck in your job. If you don't like your job, do something about it. Take action, use creativity, and solve that problem.
We used to have a game in our house. It was called Find the Keys. And I solved this problem a long time ago. It's not as fun a game as a hide the salami, but we finally put a hook by the front door, because what happens is if you bring in you come in from the groceries or something, you got your keys in your hand, you throw them down on the kitchen counter, and then they get lost under some mail or they get dropped in the couch. What happens is when you're ready to step out, or you're in a rush, you're going to work or to an event, and you can't find them, all of a sudden the anxiety level skyrockets and you start becoming grouchy to your family and whoever's in the immediate vicinity. And it doesn't work out. So, I put a mirror that has all these hooks on it. It's a nice looking mirror. And when I come in, by habit, I always hang my keys up. Now, I can't always get my family to, follow along, but they for the most part they do, and it helps. It has relieved so much stress in our life because of that.
My family, we have something similar for our dog's leash. It's just on a little hook by the door in the shape of a bone. It's kind of cute, but everyone knows that's where the dog leash goes, and same thing in the kitchen. What we're talking about really is our changes to our physical world, our environment from a physical world perspective. And I think as you're thinking about your environment and ways that you can change your environment, let me introduce different categories that are involved here. Now, we just talked about the physical world. That's one area. But then there's also spiritual beliefs too, which can shape your view, or it's one perspective of environment. So, the way you think about life and the big picture and God and why we're here and all these really what the meaning of life is, all these questions that all of us really have and are still unanswered. Our thoughts. Yes.
Well, bringing that up, I was talking with my wife the other night. We went out and we did something spontaneous and different. Since I'm working weekends now, I don't have the opportunity to go out on the weekends with my wife and family. Usually during the week, we train jujitsu. So it's like I'm kind of bummed out because it's like I still feel like my weekend is, Monday through Thursday or Monday through Wednesday, and then I'm feel like I'm still like during the week because it's I'm going to class, and it's just like it just feels like I have no time off because I'm not spending time with my family. So Tuesday night we went out and decided, let's skip class and go down to the beach. And we went to Margaritaville. It's a nice Jimmy Buffett's new hotel that opened down here in Hollywood, Florida. And we went to a bar, and ate some food. Of course, bring the kids to the bar. It's a good place. But no, it was really nice. And we were talking about how we're such a close-knit family. And one of the things that, there's a couple of them, but you talk about religion. One of them is, we have friends and family and activities at church that have brought us closer together because we kind of know what's going on. But also we do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu together. We've been doing it for 7 years together. So our kids have grown up in that. And it forms a tighter bond because it's something that, we believe in together and we can share and talk to about. And my wife was saying how that, that having that community, because in the jiu-jitsu class, it's not just we go to a class and leave. We have friends that we've established there, really good people that we, sometimes have barbecues with, or, go see the fights with, or someone that would just help us if we need it. And having these communities and these people around that are spiritual and positive is a positive vibe. Or a gym or a CrossFit, my wife does CrossFit, and it's the same thing. I think that's why CrossFit is so successful right now, is because when people go there, they encourage each other. So you have that whole environment around you, and that's going between environment and it's also your peers. That's why we're melding these two together, because they really do go hand in hand.
Yeah. Going back to the kitchen analogy, if you're trying to cook something, you need to have everything in place. Your ingredients, the right pot or pan, you need a stove. You're talking about needing these different resources and having them in place. The same thing goes with with the school and the life that you've created, Tom. You have a spiritual element, you have relationships, you have these thoughts and emotions that go along with your life. These are all things that we can change about our lives.
And what about, if you think, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this at work, right? You have people that are just sleepwalking through their life, where they have no goals and ambitions, and they like to naysay everyone else or complain or gossip. And you sit around the water cooler and just talk about the boss or some, lady across the way that you don't like her sweater or something, and after you do that for a while, it really, those negative feelings, just, they weigh on you, man. They make you feel bad. And it's just, and as humans, I think we have a tendency to kind of lean that way. And you think it's fun for a while, but what happens when it turns and then they're talking about you, or, it's just really nasty. And it's better to be around people that are positive and have some goals or share something similar to you, than those people that are just going to, naysay and say something bad about others.
And that what you mentioned is really your professional area of life, and that's how you make your money and how you spend your time making money to support your lifestyle.
Right, but that can happen in families too. I mean, there's plenty of toxic families out there, and like I said in the past, you can make sure you love your family and friends, but you don't always have to hang out with them or share. If you have a goal and you're talking about something that you want to accomplish, and someone in your family is always like, "Oh, you'll never reach that," or "No, that's just that's not for you. You could never do that." Put them out of your mind and stop sharing your goals with them. Maybe share it with people that are going to support you.
Yeah, and it's that is definitely part of your environment, and how you support your environment, how you pay for that, and how you pay for your lifestyle is certainly one aspect, which affects the individual as well as the family who's benefiting from that work. So it is something to think about. You mentioned, Tommy, you mentioned fun and health come into your decisions. Not only money but relationships with your wife, with your family, how you feel, as well as how you think about things, and what you expect out of life. That all builds a very rich environment for all of us to build on.
Think about it, John. Right now, we're also doing this on YouTube. You can see it, but our listeners can't. But right behind me, I have my window open and I have blinds opened all over the house. So it's light. It's light inside my house. And that's one of those key things that you don't really think about. That's something that's a small little thing, but pulling a blind open or lifting a shade can make wonders if you come out and your house is all bright. I remember my mom, whenever she was cleaning, it seemed like all the windows were, open and the blinds were pulled open. So there was a lot of light coming into the house. Same aspect when you're trying to go to sleep. You want the opposite. You want it nice and dark. You don't want a lot of light coming in. So that way you get a nice sound sleep. So those light and darkness can affect us. Even having a nice picture on the wall or artwork around, or something that motivates you that's hanging on the wall, or family pictures, something that you see that make you feel good. And you can do the same thing in the office.
Yeah, that's certainly part of your environment. I mean, think about seasons. Seasonal affective disorder. I never really experienced that living down in Florida, but if you've lived outside of Florida or anywhere where there are seasons, I know in Atlanta, wintertime is just, it's just so depressing. It's gray weather, rainy, sometimes icy. It's hell. And it wears on you. That's certainly an environmental factor, which can affect you, affect your life.
I do remember that when I was in the Air Force and I was stationed in Omaha, Nebraska. I can relate because I remember those winters that just seemed that they would not go away.
Yeah.
And I was used to growing up in, South Florida where it's always sunny, and if or it might rain, but it goes away in 20 minutes. So yeah, it definitely affects your mood.
So as you're thinking about in your own environment, I think it is helpful if you kind of break it down into break your environment down into these various areas, including the physical world, your spiritual beliefs, your thoughts, your emotions, relationships, um, money, fun, and health, and try to think of your environment in those areas, and I think you'll start getting a lot of traction because you'll figure out specific things that you need to do in order to change your environment. Like if you have a friend who's just a real pain in the ass and always bugging you about doing podcasts. I'm just kidding. If the it's terrible. I really shouldn't even joke about that because I'm talking about like a very toxic person in your life. Um, you might want to consider, changing that environment and cutting that person loose. Another thing to consider too is, I know might seems like a stretch, but I think it is related to environment because you need to look at where you are in your readiness to change. There are different stages of readiness of change, and I think knowing where you are can help prepare you for that next step. Just like if you're in the kitchen, you want to pull all the ingredients together. You want to make sure you have a stove and a pot and pan and all that. This knowing where you are, knowing what temperature to turn the oven up to is a good thing. If you're in a stage where you're just pre-contemplating, you maybe have no idea that you need to change your behavior or that you even have a problem. You might be denying that. That's pre-contemplation. But once you have the thought that you need to change your life, then you move into the contemplation stage to where you probably recognize that you have this feeling or some aspect of your environment that you want to change. You're not really, you acknowledge you have a problem and you begin to start thinking about it. That's contemplation. Once you start taking action, you move into the preparation stage where you're planning to take action. Not necessarily taking it, but you're really starting to get serious and prepare for change. And then you move into the action step. That's where you actually take action and you make a decision and you take action on it. 2 more steps.
I think that action step is like probably one of the most difficult, man, because all of us will think, yeah, I want to get in shape. I want to eat better. I want to be healthier. I want to be around for my kids or my family or whatever like that. But when it comes down to it and you say, oh man, I got to give up some pizza and I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. So you procrastinate before. And I'm guilty of this, man. I do this with my diet all the time where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to cut out all my carbs. And I'm like, oh man, but I still have a bunch of rice in my fridge. I'll do it like this weekend or after. And it just prolongs and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah. And that's why we always say, focus on the small things. If you're trying to do something big, you might not be able to hold, it might be so big that you might not be able to hold yourself to that promise each and every time. You need to make sure that if you set a goal, you need to make sure that it's possible to do each and every time. You might be working towards getting better and better at that. But if you keep just knocking yourself down because you're constantly not making that goal, you might want to think about your goal and get really tight. Maybe it's, breaking it down to, 2 times a day or 2 times a week or something like that you have starches or something like that.
And setting up that environment, making sure that the foods that will tempt you are out of the house. In this case of what we're talking about, if I wanted to get rid of carbs, and making sure that your family's on board. If my wife cooks a dinner and I'm trying to get rid of carbs and it's all, bunch of pasta, then we're on 2 different wavelengths and we need to discuss, I need to discuss my goals and share it with her and what I'm trying to accomplish so I have a support system around me.
not that I'm preaching vegetarianism, because I'm not a vegetarian, but Paul McCartney is, and he said if everyone would just take one day a week to eat vegetarian, that would make a huge difference in the world. As far as demand for beef or other processed meats, um, that could really make a difference. And if you think about it, just changing to a vegetarian meal one day a week, that really doesn't seem like very much, but it would be a big step.
My daughter Logan has switched to become a vegetarian. Not, she's not saying she's going to do it forever, but she wanted to try it. And she's been doing well, but she has challenges because, same thing. We have dinners and we include, chicken and meat, and she does not eat those dinners. She has to make a separate one, and it's sometimes it's difficult for her to do it, but it's an experiment to see if she likes it or not.
Yeah. So then there's the maintenance stage after you take action. And if you're talking about long-term stage, I think different people have different thoughts on what it really means to make permanent change. And in my book, I think you need to, for something to become a habit and something to become really permanent change, you need to be taking action and maintaining that action for a year at least. I'm kind of pushing some of those challenges now with my push-ups, because I've been doing it pretty much I do it every day regardless. But I've been fluctuating on my numbers a lot, and really changing and adapting my workout routine. But I feel that every morning I have to do push-ups, and it's still going strong. But can I say it's a permanent change just yet? No, because I haven't been doing it a year, and I tell you, I struggle at it. I'm struggling at it right now. It's like the thought will cross my mind. Oh, I don't really feel like doing push-ups this morning. And I'm just like, bump that, hit the floor, Jack.
Hey, I'm 3 or 4 months away from a year for giving up Diet Coke and drinking only water. And I have to say that I've never felt healthier because I have not been sick since I quit it. And so that's one of the things that are motivating me, whether it's because I'm drinking, got rid of Diet Coke, or if I'm just because I'm drinking more fluids now because I'm drinking a lot of water, that it's just, keeping me hydrated and keeping me a little bit healthier. It's a benefit for me that I've been happy, and I'm proud to say that I haven't done it, something that was a bad addiction for me.
Yeah. So, after a year, and what the ultimate goal really is for any change is, they call it the termination stage. And at this stage, you really have the problem no longer presents any temptation or threat. And there's no chance of you going back. Kind of like the way I feel about smoking cigarettes, and the way I feel about personal debt. There's no way in hell I'm ever going back to that way of life. It's just, I will never allow that to happen. So, yeah, I think if you recognize where you are in those different stages of readiness for change, I think that might help you, get some traction on whatever you're trying to do. It's all, and that also, is part of changing your environment, changing the way you think about things. And if telling yourself that you can't do it, well, you're not going to be able to do it because you're already defeated before you even try, when you tell yourself you can't do it before you even try.
Right. And if you find yourself in that cycle where you're stuck around toxic people or a toxic environment, some of the other things you can do is, go out, join a group. If you like sports, join a sports team or someone, and enroll on meetup.com and find something that you're interested in. It could be a hobby, or find other people in your area. You can search within 5 miles, 25 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, whatever it is. Maybe take a trip, away to, go to a conference or something. And the other things that you can do, there's religious, like John talked about, if you have a church or a synagogue or whatever you believe,
school.
Or a school.
Even.
Yeah, community. Community is good for everyone. I mean, you can volunteer. something to get you out into a different environment that is positive. The other thing that you can do is say you're just stuck and you can't go anywhere. Start listening to podcasts like this. Listen to podcasts that will encourage you. Get audiobooks you can check them out from the library, usually for free. Something that will get you in a different frame of mind. Read. Join an online forum if you can't get out.
I think a large part with someone's ability to move forward with positive change in their life really depends upon how well they know themselves and how genuine they are with themselves. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes we have some hard truths to face in our life, and we're trying to create change, but we recognize that some things can't be changed, and sometimes change, creating positive change in your life, just includes acceptance of that situation or something about yourself, or just a cold hard truth. And we try to do that here on the Swift Kick in the Ass. This is really near and dear to Tom and my hearts, as far as facing the reality, facing the truth, being true to yourself. Just if you can start from there, then that's going to change your world in many different ways.
You know that Norman Vincent Peale used to have imaginary, every night when he would go lay down for sleep, he'd have these imaginary masterminds, and he would imagine people that he had read about, so he knew how they would respond to questions and stuff. But he'd have like Ben Franklin and presidents and statesmen, and maybe people that he really idolized, and he would consult with them in his mind, and he would come back and say, he'd ask them a question and have them respond and what he thinks they would say. And it was just one technique he would use to kind of get out of his head and kind of be around, they say Jim Rohn has a saying, surround yourself with the, you are an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, he was trying to spend time with imaginary presidents and statesmen to elevate his consciousness.
I'm sure, there are a lot of listeners out there that were maybe this is an old thing, but the bracelets that say, what WWJD, what would Jesus do?
Right.
I mean, it's kind of the same concept, except you're not just asking that of one person. You're asking that of a panel of people who are really expert at whatever you're trying to do, or whatever you need expert knowledge in. Using that to your advantage and using that as a basis of your decisions.
Yeah, sometimes I ask myself, what would Lex Luthor do? Guess that's not the best role model. Sometimes Batman, because Batman always thinks his way out of everything. So,
yeah, it's bad when I ask Al Pacino from Scarface, what would my little friends do? Anyhow, I think we touched upon basically, everything, but we hope you enjoyed this episode. And we hope you take what we said to heart and start working on your environment. A lot of us can get a lot of traction with making positive change in their life if they just look at their environments. So
absolutely.
Until next time, this is John.
And this is Tom. Peace. Make sure you check out swiftkickinass.com. Sign up for our free membership, and you'll get videos, John's simple spending plan, and a lot of cool stuff always coming your way. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Till next time. Bye.